Goes.
All right. Let me just make sure we're live.
Yeah, we're live.
Okay, cool. So thanks for everybody who's sitting here waiting for us to go live. So one thing, and I just talked to Sheets about this, but explained to everybody. So I went ahead and did my preview video for the Cup Series on Wednesday, which they're like an hour long, 50 minutes long, whatever. And somebody manually flagged it, like a viewer manually flagged it like 50 minutes after it went up. So like it was taken off of YouTube, and I just realized that this morning, and I appealed it, and like, oh, well, like holy Toledo, like nothing's wrong with it, so it's like back live. But it only got viewed by like 20 people when it went live Wednesday. And some people like DM me like when it went live, being like, "Oh, good video and stuff." So I didn't know it went down until this morning. It's back live now. I even uploaded back on my own personal channel so people could see it. But practically, that's like 50 minutes of my life kind of wasted on Wednesday because nobody watched it. So what I'm going to do here is basically probably be live a lot longer than normal because I practically want to do that whole preview video live here, going through everything to explain why I'm viewing things a certain way and everything, and then we can talk about the slate probably like in 40 minutes or so.
But you know what's cool? I think we'll be able to do it because as you go through the drivers, I might chime in with something like, well, he's getting owned or something like that. Well, we'll make this work.
Yeah, I think we can.
Hey, you're lucky. I mean, if for like I would have thought that people would chime in earlier in the week and say, your video came down, or where's your video? Like with me, if God forbid my freaking video doesn't go up, I get like DM, hey Sheets, what happened to your video? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, like I said, I think a lot of the main guys who watched it when it came out. And at that point, they were like, okay, cool, we're all good. So let me go ahead and bring this up. And so like any DFS questions and stuff, I'm just going to have to answer like in 40 minutes because I want to basically get all this, all the stuff I get done in the morning or early in the week and stuff. And so a lot of this is going to be just kind of looking back at Dover, and I'm going to forget some things because that's why I typically do them on Tuesday and Wednesday. But when we look at Dover specifically,
now you mentioned Dover because Dover is the track which is most, I guess, correlated to the track that we're on this week.
So, I mean, it's a good thing you bring that up. So a lot of people would argue no. But when we look at where Dover lines up in the schedule, and typically and we look at the people who are actually, let me go ahead and grab one from earlier, probably Dover of last year. So when we look at like recent form, now this is just based on last year's data point, but I've seen this in previous years, which is why I use this. And we look at just where people felt last year between Dover and Nashville, and you look and you see that Byron was very good at Dover entering May last year. Had an off race at Kansas, but performed very well at Darlington, Charlotte, Nashville, and stuff. And you see that, and we're looking primarily at these races here on screen. And you typically see that Dover correlates very well with how people will perform in the month of May, not just at the 1.5s, but because we're entering a stretch of 5 races in a row, and really 6 with Texas this year. It's not that teams are able to pull stuff from Dover and apply it to the track like next week, because a lot of those adjustments changes have to be tested in sims and the practice and the race. But mainly because of the quick turnover, at the shops, they get like 3 days at the shop and then they have to send the car back out for the next week. We typically see the people who are fast entering the month of May at Dover perform very well through the remaining months. And so like just looking at last year, you can see and I mean, some guys are going to go up and down, but we see that Hamlin and Truex and Larson, all these guys were very fast last year. And this is very much a situation to where Larson gets wrecked last year at Dover and then performs very well through the month of May. And this is very much a situation of when you look back, it's not this individual driver is good, but when you look at it in the context of previous years or previous things of how it goes, it's driver A performed pretty decent at Dover. He ended up being pretty fast at the other tracks. That's something we want to take note of. And so that's like the first aspect of why I look at Dover specifically, like in terms of this year, in more of a off point and more of a sense of where people should be in line. And the expectations at Dover, or the results at Dover, specifically how you're able to perform in the draft, how you're able to drive, is very important because it's very difficult to pass at Dover, as mentioned by a lot of the drivers. Like a lot of air, there's a lot of dirty air. It's very difficult to get around people. It's easy to run people down, but in order to get around somebody, once you're like 3/10 behind them, it's very very difficult to do that. Um, and when you look at Dover and how people should have done at Dover, um, in terms of like expected running position and expected speed, that should very much line up with where people are this week at Kansas. And so, I mean, yet again, since I did the video earlier, all this is just leftover stuff from the video. But as we look through of like who's fast, we see that Denny Hamlin has not only been fast throughout the whole year of last year, but he's been very consistent this year, having the fourth best car at Vegas, the best car at Dover, not because he won, just because of what he was able to do um, through the laps, pass people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things to note that I wanted to bring up that I brought up in the video is the issue with Byron, and not in an issue of, because like, trust me, I've probably made more money off of Byron than probably anybody versus the last year. Um, and this is very much a situation of, or not a situation of, oh, Byron's burned me, or like, oh, he's not performing, I'm tilted, I'm getting off of him, but just looking at where people are, like the age and the time of being overweight on Byron, the time of playing Byron as him having the best car, like I do believe that that time is pretty much not necessarily past us, because he's still in play, and certainly today because he offers place differential, but he's no longer, a top three, a top four car. Now he's not a 10th place car because he ran into issues at Las Vegas. He got damaged from the trash bag. He got wrecked at Dover, but we're clearly seeing that Hamlin, Truex, and Larson are the main people that you want to be chasing, entering this. Kind of like, what do they call it? Sheets like in like in stocks, like what is, like, is it a line graph? I, I go blank on the term. Like when you're looking at the history of like how a stock is
Just a
performing.
chart. I mean,
Yeah, the chart.
okay.
Like that's basically how I view this, of like where people have been, what they're trending towards, and everything like that. And we're seeing that Hamlin, Larson, Truex, and not just because they were the three best cars at Dover, but that's where we're going at with Hamlin at 11.3, Larson 11, Truex 10.3. Is those are the three priorities I had entering the week of where I think they're going to end up performing in this race, regardless of where they qualified. Hamlin, Larson, and Truex should be the three best cars in this field. And yet again, that's before we look at practice. As we continue going down, we see that Reddick. This is an example of a situation to where he should have performed better at Dover, and not because of his pricing or relative to what he ends up scoring value wise, but I fully believe Reddick should have shown better speed at Dover because he was the second best car at Las Vegas, and he was aiming to, or he should have been, he was projected to be like a fifth, fourth best car there, and he was struggling heavily in the draft. Um, and yet again, people are going to argue that like Dover and Kansas have nothing alike, but I would argue that nearly all these cars or all these tracks are very similar now, especially because they're turning more into a momentum style racing, to where you can't afford to run the bottom for too long, the bottom of the track rather, because you end up, having such a much lower average speed in the corners. Like that really kills you on the straightaways. And so Kansas, you run the top line. At Las Vegas, you run the top line. At Darlington, you run the top line. At Charlotte, you run the top. Like we're all moving towards like all these tracks driving similar. Same thing with Dover. Like you don't run the top at Dover, but it's a one lane racetrack. Like, sure, these guys are running in the middle of Dover, but it's practically as if there's an invisible wall there, because if you move up the track, you're in the marbles, you're in the wall. So it's like you're running the top of the line, or you're running the top of the track. You can't go anywhere up top. And so those are all the reasons why uh, I viewed I view Dover so uh, similar to these other tracks, specifically Charlotte. Anyway, so in my opinion, Tyler Reddick should have performed better at Dover, and 2311 should have performed better at Dover as well, specifically where Bubba was last week. Now, yes, he's involved in the crash, but Bubba should have been much better in the draft compared to where he was in real life and where he had been at these tracks last year. And the reason I'm bringing that up is, and this is not to be different or finding a reason to be off the field. I'm just going to assume, because I'm also not listening to any other content just for this month. I just want to do my own thing and not be influenced by the outside. But I'm going to assume that Tyler Reddick is going to show up very much through different projection sources, specifically when they're looking at recent track history between what 2311 has done, between what Reddick has done at this track. And I think the increase from Reddick being like $8,000 or so last week to him being 10.7 is an indicator of is just an example of that, because he was like 8.2 last week, which based on how he performs, like he should have been way more expensive. Even at like Las Vegas earlier this year, Reddick was slightly more expensive, and he is the second best car. So like entering the week, I looked at it like Reddick, I think, is going to be overvalued, overprojected, and kind of where he's at. I don't think he has the speed to beat Larson, Hamlin, Truex straight up. And so that was kind of lowering my interest in him just right off the bat entering this week. Yet again, not related to where he's at in this race. It's just where I was entering. Same thing with Bell. When I looked at Bell, oddly enough, he's the pole sitter. So this, like today, isn't a case of I'm fading the pole sitter because pole sitters hasn't worked out, or so on and so forth. But Bell has been pretty much the fourth best Joe Gibbs car, with Hamlin, Truex, and even Ty Gibbs arguing that Ty Gibbs has been better recently. And where Bell has been in both of the races this year in terms of just raw speed. Now he's not going to be 22nd, 23rd, but Bell has a lot of issues in the draft. He has a lot of issues specifically this year just passing people in general. And even outside of the playoff race last year at Vegas, where Bell was the second best car, he hasn't had speed to jump the guys up top. And so yet again, entering today's race or entering this weekend, I was very much like, I think I'm very curious on what Reddick can show in practice or where he can qualify, because those would be the only things I'd be looking at to want to play him, especially because they're queuing and racing in very similar conditions. Same thing with Bell. I think there was just a high chance that Bell kind of underperforms this week, regardless of where he qualifies, regardless of what he shows in practice. Those are my big takeaways that I think are very that I had to talk about earlier before I get to the picks and everything, because people are just going to think I'm trying to be different. This is just where I was entering the week.
So wait, so I have a question just based on just the couple of things you said, just to clarify. When you say stuff like you would have expected Truex, Reddick, and Bubba to have performed better at Dover, is that viewed as a negative or a positive? You know what I mean? Like, is that does that mean, well, they just got unlucky, so they performed poorly, or boy, they should have performed better, so that there's something wrong?
So you mentioned Truex. I may have misspoke. I
probably wrote it down wrong. So Reddick and Bubba, actually.
Yeah. So Reddick and Bubba. So like last week, Reddick was based on all the metrics that I look at, which are all behind the scenes. Nobody wants to deal with all that. Reddick was the 8th best car last week, based on average riding position, based on the guys he was running around, based on the amount of time spent in the top 5, top 10, and combined with the pit road times that these cars have. And also just paying attention to the race. Reddick did struggle in the draft. Now, when we're looking specifically at people up top, I think it's much more easier to make these type of arguments. Like if I was arguing this for like somebody in the 20s, I feel like we're having to really like, look at hairs and stuff. But with Reddick, based on where he had been at all these races before, we should have seen Reddick. And this isn't like I project him high. I'm pissed off that he didn't run well last week. We should have at least seen him compete for like a top 3 or a top 4 running position, not even finishing wise, but he should have been running better than he did last week in general. So for me, I view that as a negative entering Kansas, despite the fact that he showed good speed in practice, which we can like look at practice and stuff and see that he was the second best car at average speeds in practice. When we look at where he's at in the long run, first in the 5 lap, third in the 10, fourth in the 15, like this is what he's expected to show Kansas, but just based on what the team is doing. But where I look at in terms of these races, like in the draft, like I think he should have been able to get through traffic much more efficiently than he did at Dover. Now, yet again, going from like an expected fourth to fifth best car falling to eighth might not seem extreme, but I think that's, at least for me, like very alarming entering this weekend. And same thing with Bubba Wallace. Like Bubba was stuck in the teens all week last week, and this is before he got involved in the crash. Based on all these other races, Bubba at least should have been like an 11th place car, a 12th place car, a 10th place car throughout the day. That's not him competing for the win. That's not him really still being in play for DFS. Just in real life, he should have been running a lot better than where he was running. And you can look at that as maybe they were just off at Dover. Maybe, the conditions between practice and the race, they just weren't set up correctly. They didn't adapt correctly. But that unit of those two drivers, that team 2311, I think underperformed at Dover compared to what they should have been doing. And for me, because I've used Dover so importantly, like those are negatives entering Kansas. Now, if they like show up, and they do well at Kansas, and then they do well at Darlington and stuff, we can then look back and say, yeah, Dover was an anomaly. They just underperformed there. But I think of just how tightly these races are, I personally want to kind of be underweight on Wallace and Reddick, just from the outside looking in. Yet again, before I even look at projections, that's just where I was feeling with these guys. Blaney was another individual and Chastain. We'll talk about these two here. Like Blaney has been practically a top 10 car in all of these races, and specifically at Vegas and Dover. Just from this year, he's been the seventh best and the fourth best car. Him at $8,600, like that's a pretty big discount. Yet again, we're not looking at these individual drivers as people fighting to win the race, fighting to lead laps, but people who should be running and finishing inside the top 10. And just based on that pricing of $8,600, like he's underpriced based on how he's been performing. Yet again, like today he's a place differential play, and so I have no issue going there because he should very easily pay that stuff off. But Blaney, I had interest in, and Chastain is somebody that I also look at, and this is more so looking at where they were last year during the stretch, and kind of where Chastain's coming back to this year in terms of speed. This is a situation where I think if Chastain entering this weekend was able to show speed in practice and qualify up front, him at $9,100, I think he could very easily run, top 5 all day. I think he's a play that I want to be playing and getting to if he presents a situation where he could rival for laps led, if he could rival for a top 5 running position. And it just so happens that he's qualified second. He's shown all those things in this race. And so yet again, entering this week, I was like, okay, I want to kind of be on Chastain, kind of regardless of what he's showing. And yet again, he qualified second. And so it just so happens that Hamlin and Truex are starting 13th and 14th today. Larson starting 4th. Blaney's, starting the back of the field. Chastain starting second. And so I'm not using the starting grid as a reason why I'm liking these guys. These are just reasons why people are going to see that I'm playing these guys, that I've projected them to do well, et cetera, entering this race. I think that we've at least addressed that for like the first 20 minutes. I think we can talk about this race now. At this point, I haven't talked about the bottom of the field, but we can get through that as we get questions or drivers and stuff. And so when we're looking at where people are at today, just based on the practice speeds they showed yesterday, which yet again, it was cooler, than normal. But I believe this practice data is going to be pretty good at showing us where people should fall in line at, how they should be able to get through the field. And the main thing that I was focusing on entering this week was the fact that since you have to run the outside here at Kansas, and it's very difficult to pass people, the reason you want to play guys who have been fast and at these races and are showing speed in practice is because in order to pass people, you have to leave the top of the line or leave the top of the track, go to the bottom, be able to one, carry enough speed through the bottom of the track to pass the guy on the outside, um, and make passes. Like, I mean, I just described racing, but when we look at like Dover last weekend, like Truex had damage on the car, and he was still able to wrap the bottom of the track and not leave the bottom of the track. And no one else could do that at Dover. Now, I'm not saying that's the reason why I like Truex, but you want to chase teams and chase drivers who are showing that they're able to either A, get off the main line, or just be able to maintain speed passing people. And so, like, I would be shocked today if Hamlin and Truex aren't drivers or aren't teams that are able to get off the top, make a pass on the bottom, or run the middle of the line and beat the car they're trying to pass out of the corner. And then based on like where they're at in practice speeds, Larson, Reddick, Hamlin, Byron, Truex are your fastest five on just average laps, and they all ran enough laps for me to be okay looking at that. Now Larson didn't; he only ran like 15, 14 laps, but Larson's like the best car entering like this series. Like we're not really worried about that. Hamlin, Byron, Truex expected where they should be at. Um, Reddick yet again is second best on averages. Yet again, I'm assuming he's going to be chalk today. And personally, I'm just hesitant, just in my gut that I just want to be a lower on him. But where we look at
Which guy do you expect to be chalk?
Tyler Reddick,
Okay.
Just based on what he's been able to show at this track, and when I'm looking at these guys' laps specifically, and where I think this race is going to be won, which is on the long run, Hamlin, Truex, Reddick, Byron, and Larson are all together. And the good thing is these guys were spread out between the two practice groups. And so I'm not going to go into that discussion again, but I personally don't um, hold the differences between the groups as high as other people. And so what we're looking at here and what I'm looking at is pretty much realistic speeds on where these guys should be competing. And so we have Truex, Hamlin, and Reddick showing that these guys are all going to compete basically for like a top 7 today, just right where they should be at. We have Byron who's showing that he should be able to get through the field and, compete for like a top 12, top 10. It'll just depend on what this race ends up doing up top to see if he's going to force his way into the optimal or if he's just going to be the first guy out. Larson should be the favorite to win this race, but your winner should come from one of these 5 guys: Truex, Reddick, Hamlin, Byron, Larson. Yet again, due to just the nature of DFS, if I think I have any issues with Reddick entering this week, then I personally just want to be underweight on him because I think the field will be on him, and I'd rather slam Truex, I'd rather slam Hamlin, Larson, and Byron compared to Truex because I think all these guys are live to win the race, and because they're so expensive, like these guys are dictating how your lineup is going, and so I mean I think the main discussion is what do you do between these guys. And so like with me, you then have to think about how this race plays out in terms of what does Larson do and how much does he lead and get fast laps in this race. If this turns into a race kind of like Dover did, to where Truex, Hamlin, and Larson are all up there racing, well, Hamlin and Truex have 10 extra points right off the bat compared to where Larson is. And so Larson will have to lead more laps. If they keep switching them between those 3 drivers, then we can argue for a build that goes like Larson, Truex, Hamlin, which leaves you with $5,800 on average for your remaining drivers. And you could very easily make those builds work. And so that's my primary build that I'm going to be working with. The 2 other builds that I'm going to be working with is if Byron is able to beat out one of Larson or not one of Larson, one of Truex and Hamlin. His main argument, or the easiest one for him to beat, would be Hamlin at 11.3, than Truex at 10.3, because Truex is $1,000 cheaper, and so like those would very much be Larson, Truex, Byron lineups, which are offering $6,000 on average for your remaining 3 drivers. And yet again, I'm not personally probably going to play a lot of Reddick. And so like I'm getting different there, and I'm perfectly okay with that. I'm also not going to play any Bell. Like I'm just going to fade Bell completely because I think he can get beat in a variety of circumstances in DFS. And if he doesn't, like, oh well, I guess I'm just wrong there. But that's really the main, like, kind of how I'm approaching this race.
Let,
And if I've
yeah,
been throwing a lot of information out there, I apologize, but I'm
no,
trying to catch
let
up.
me. This is very interesting because the fact that you didn't really look at other content, you didn't look whatever. These was completely your work, and I want to share a couple of things with you and a couple of questions, which I don't want to take you off of what you're doing. You know what I mean? I don't want to take you off your game, whatever. But I want to just throw a couple of facts out there that maybe would be interesting to you. As far as ownership goes, the way I have stuff done, and I'm pretty confident this week. Pretty tight. These are pretty tight. I'm not seeing Reddick as chalky as you might think. Like I have him at like 20 to 25% owned or something like that, but not like through the roof. Like what I'm seeing is that it's just Byron is just jammed. I mean, I'm getting him at like 50% ownership, and then Larson at like 36 or so. And as we talked about like last week and the week before, everybody, they love to play their Larson no matter where he's from and in the field. And now because, he's probably the favorite to win. I mean, I might even suggest that be a little higher owned. And another high owned guy that someone actually is referring to in the chat, which you might want to address, is Brad Keselowski. He's projecting like I have him at like the third highest owned guy on the whole slate at like 30 to 35%, coming from the 30 hole at 7,700. Um, so as far as like the ownership report, like that's kind of where I'm getting like right now. That's not to say that, oh, now change your mind, play Reddick, right? But I don't have him, at least for now, as at the top of the list. I have him just like as a bunch of guys. Like I have Blaney similarly owned from the 26. I have Bell similarly owned from the poll. I have Bubba Wallace, you mentioned, similarly owned from the 23. Hamlin, you mentioned, similarly owned. That's the way I have them. So you could I guess comment on Kozlowski if you want, and then I had a couple of other questions about like how I think you can just write this down if you want. I guess my question, as far as like how the race could go, is who's gonna can anybody lead laps besides like Larson and Bell, at least to begin with? And I guess you've kind of like touched on that a little bit, that don't worry too much about the very very beginning, because Reddick and Hamlin and these guys are fast enough, they can get through the field and lead if things work out. What do you think of Keselowski, and any comments on anything else I just said?
So let's address the ownership um, first, as this was the main focal point of the actual preview video, um, or at least 15 minutes of it. It was more so me going over my own um, approaches and stuff. And so I guess we'll have that discussion here, and I think that'll at least answer, kind of figure where things out at. And I want to start off by saying that last week was quite, I guess, ironic that we had such a deep Sims discussion the one week that ownership ended up being like spread out. It was the first one that we didn't have just like one pure like lap leader that was like projected to kill the field. Like Larson, for example. If let me bring up this stuff really fast. I'll put this on the screens, and I doubt it'll be easy to see. But this is the best I have in terms of where ownership came in last week at on these guys. And my takeaway was right when the slate locked, I knew I had lost. I knew I had lost when Larson came in at 26% ownership.
Yeah, instead of 50 or
Like
whatever.
it was lost. Because like entering the race, if I knew he was at 26, I would have played like 50% of him. Like that's a direct, like, you wanted to be over the field on that. And so as soon as it lost, as soon as it locked, I knew I was lost. Hold on, I opened the wrong one. And then when I looked at where people were coming in at in terms of lap leaders, like I said, it was very much spread out. That's why one guy didn't necessarily run away with the field. And Truex has been in my personal approach, he's been underowned compared or with what the field is doing with him. He's been like the new guy who's been underowned and underperforming. And specifically, did I just open the same thing twice? I did not. When I look at what I've been doing, that's the wrong one. We need Dover. What I have personally been doing, like I had my actual only profitable weeks in the Cup Series had been Las Vegas and another one I don't remember. But I have actually had 0 Truex in these races on complete like accident, not on purpose. I just ended up not playing Truex at Las Vegas, and the reason I brought this up is because these are the builds that I was doing, or this was Dover. This was last week, so I had no Truex last week at Dover, and because it's such a pivotal point in the month in terms of how I want to approach it, I decided to play very aggressive at Dover and chase a lot of the guys up front and look at people struggling passing in the draft based on what we saw at Texas with Kyle Busch, who had very similar speed to the guys up front. He just couldn't pass people. He gained position through staying out for the yellow. And so I ended up being like very light on Kyle Larson. I basically had like no Truex, and I built specifically around people who were starting up front and taking, a risky approach of like, well, what if the speed that Kyle Busch is showing is real? Blaney's starting second. He's showing that he has at least the top 7 car. I'll play Byron. Reddick starting 5th. Mispriced. He should be able to perform. Hamlin, so on and so forth. And so I was very, disappointed in my approach last weekend, despite the fact, even with, Byron underperforming and Wallace underperforming, I was still cashing before they had their big wreck with those guys. Compared that with how I approached Las Vegas, and I'm using this to just answer the question you asked me related to ownership and stuff. Yet again, I had 0 Truex at Vegas, and he ended up having the 3rd best car. And so I have actually like been extremely lucky that I have had very viable lineups missing and just not having any Truex. And you can see that this is a race that the builds ended up looking drastically different from Dover, and that's just because I actively chose to be more aggressive at Dover. Anyway, the reason I'm bringing that up related to the ownership question we had related to what the field did last week, and with Reddick being, I think you said 25. I think he's going to probably land at like 28, 29, 30, and that's just me doing my head clown math and stuff. Like when I view those expensive drivers at like that ownership, that's very much a situation to where that 20, especially if like the contest pays out like 24 or 23%, whatever the main ones do, that driver will dictate what that portion of the field is doing, whether they are locking themselves into the cash realistically. I mean, outside of like values or whatever, killing certain lineups. But that driver is going to either determine if those lineups are even considering the cash or if they're practically dead on arrival. And when you're looking at somebody like Reddick, Bell, Larson is going to be higher, so that doesn't necessarily factor into that. Where are we at today? So like today, yeah, like with Chastain, Bell, Kyle Busch, and Reddick, and you can argue this with Truex and Hamlin, but I think those two are far superior than any other play in the teens. Like if Chastain fails, like those lineups are dead on arrival. If Bell fails, those lines are down on arrival. They don't have a chance to get there. And so when we start looking at where those ownerships go, I know it's not like a cumulative ownership to where you just add Truex's or you just add Reddick's ownership to Bell's ownership. They both fail. Like that actual total ownership in the field is dead. I know it doesn't work that way, but it's still, in the same realm of like, I think Reddick at like 25 to 30%, whatever he falls in line there, like I think that's over owned
That's too
compared to,
much.
yeah, yeah.
What do you
Anyway,
what do you think? Just addressing some of the questions in here, like some of these value pieces. Like I already brought up Kozlowski before. You want to talk about him, and then Someone's bringing up Austin Hill at 5,800. Is that someone that? So I'm not, I'm not seeing him being that high owned. But if what do I know? What do you think of some of the value pieces that can make the rest of your lineups work? Between Kozlowski's more mid range, and where are you as far as these like all these 5K guys?
Yeah, so this will answer that Kozlowski question that I wrote down. I also got to talk about the lap leaders besides those guys, but I'll do that after this. So with Kozlowski, so this is where like Chris Buescher also comes in. I know he's not a place differential play, but we're seeing that Chris Buescher and Kozlowski are performing very similar. Like that team in general is performing very similar, and we're seeing that like Chris Buescher has also been, or based on where Buescher has been running compared to what he was doing last year, he's been underperforming just realistically compared to where he should be. Like last year he was very much, you could see that he was fighting for a top 10. I mean, he ran into issues at Vegas, but we're seeing that at Dover, he felt like a 16th best car. And we look at that same trend with what Keselowski was doing, and you see it much more aggressively with him compared to like last year at these tracks. He was fighting for, sixth to seventh, eighth, um, as the best car. And we've seen a drastic like decrease in where he is running, and he has not been running into issues. This is pure speed at Las Vegas and Dover. And so when I look at Keselowski at 77, like, and this is before we look at practice and we look at where he qualified, like I would look at him to finish, 15th to 21st today. That's the range I would give him as an outcome. And then we look at where he's at in terms of practice and averages. He's pretty much right in the middle of the pack when we look at all the laps together. And then we look at his runs, and this is certainly more attractive, like of why you would have an idea or why you would want to play him, because he's showing that 16th best in 5 lap speed, which is short run we're not really concerned about. We're seeing that he is 14th and 10 lap, 10th and 15, but we also look at the amount of people who didn't run those runs, and so we see that you could argue that Elliott's going to be ahead of him, Bell's going to be ahead of him, Bowman's going to be ahead of him. So that's 3 positions added on, like just there alone to his 10th ranking here. That pushes him down to 13th, 14th. So that's just where he's off, like, or where he's at, like off the trailer. And then I then look at where he's been running in these 2 races recently, Las Vegas and Dover, and even Texas, because he struggled there. I just don't have that data up on the screen. I would be hesitant to prioritize Keselowski today, and I'm probably not going to play any of him. That's before he's chalk, he's not chalk. I just don't really have a lot of interest in Keselowski today, because I feel like if I'm chasing him at 7,000, I'm giving up salary up top, and I'm giving up salary at the bottom. And if there's place differential plays that I want to chase, yet again, kind of going back to the difference between what Kyle Busch did at Texas and what Larson did at Dover, between like those true drastic guys up top and the guys that are like, fighting for like a top 10 running position like Kyle Busch is compared to Larson being a top 3 guy. The place differential in the back that I have no issue chasing today is 1 is Byron and 2 is Blaney. I think it's very likely that Blaney is able to pass a lot of people, and I think he's the exact same play as Keselowski, but with legit like top 8 upside, to where with Keselowski, his expectation in this race would be, like, as I said, from like 15th to 21st, whereas like Blaney is very much an expectation of 12th to like 8th to 7th when this race is all said and done. And so I would personally find, if you're deciding to play in the mid-range of like Keselowski, find the extra money to get to Blaney, as I think he's a much better play. And typically when somebody is in that same place differential range and stuff, like I would much rather just chase the guy who has shown us actual speed in these races. Like with here, we can see that Blaney's been a top 10 car in this at all, whereas there's a lot of risk involved with Keselowski. In regards to the value plays, or what I'm finishing my lineups with, let me see where I'm at right now. It's really just mixing them up. I don't personally have a favorite. My projections favorites would be like LaJoy, Harrison Burton in the 5K range. I think there's a lot of upside with Priest. I've mentioned this year that we can trust, especially with where Priest and where like how expensive Barry, or like when Barry would qualify poorly, when Gregson would qualify poorly this year, we've seen that they can get through the field and pass people. So I have no issue playing Ryan Priest starting from I think 32nd, with him able to get through the field. Let's see. Past that, I'm playing Derek Kraus starting last. When we look at what Allmendinger did, and this is not an expectation of what Derek Kraus can do, but when we look at what AJ did last weekend, like this was very, very impressive that AJ was able to basically run 11th to 14th all day at Dover. Like that's like you got to.
Excuse me, not that I really won last week, but remember everybody was shitting on my AJ Allmendinger with no chance to hold his position. It was like literally the only play I made that worked.
Yeah, no, that was like I was just watching the race. I'm like, I can't believe AJ's is like that's awesome to see. So like good play on that. And when we look back at where AJ been or where he's been, 10th best at Homestead last year, 11th best at Dover based on my stuff. Like he has shown that upside. The other part of that is everybody else in these cars are horrible. Kraus is terrible. Like Hemrick is terrible. Like I think they are drastically lower than AJ on the talent scale. But Derek Kraus as the cheapest play starting last, like that is probably going to be a guy that I end up chasing, specifically when we compare it to Haley. I'd much rather play Kraus over Haley. Gilliland's starting too high up for me. I'd rather get the discount between Kraus and Herbst. It really comes into play as if I can afford Harrison Burton, I'll get to him. If I can afford Zane Smith or LaJoy, I'll get to him. But it's really Kraus if I'm like needing money. Austin Hill, because I know somebody brought up Austin Hill. I would literally just put where or how Dylan has been performing as a. Let me go ahead and put Austin here as a placeholder because I think they're very much in line to perform the same way. Austin has, if you're looking at his own personal history in the Cup Series between running Beard Motorsports at Michigan and his other RCR start this year, he ran into mechanical issues. So I don't think that's really a data set that we necessarily want to look at. But where would we truly anticipate like Austin Dillon to perform if he was like $5,800? Well, last week, Dillon was like 32nd, 33rd all day. I don't believe this expectation is warranted just with what Austin Hill, his lack of experience. So like the 19th, the 21st, the 22nd in some of these races, but like anywhere between the 25th to 30th best car would be the expectation for Austin Hill with him starting 34th. It'll just come down to, let me see. I was going to say projections, but let me just see what I have him for. So I have Austin Hill for like 21 points today. So like if he does that, it's not going to work. So if you're playing him, you need him to gain at least probably 9-10 positions, which would require him, finishing 23rd, 24th, which then falls in line with attrition plays. So that is like if I'm playing Austin Hill, or if you're getting to him, and this is like, lineup theory or whatever, he works in situations to where if a lot of people run into issues that are up top. So Austin Hill is a complementary play if you're getting different with like a lap leader, or you're expecting like say Larson to run into issues, et cetera, et cetera. Like Austin Hill would be if I'm building in that realm. So outside of that, I have no interest in Austin Hill. Lap leaders between Larson, early lap leaders besides Larson and Bell, like that's where Chastain falls in. I think there's a really good chance or a really good argument to be made that Chastain can get to the lead and not even run away with, but his price tag doesn't require him to run away with the race. Let me go ahead and put this on here with the recent form. So when we then move this to looking at the starting grid compared to where these guys are at, you look at Bell, and we can see arguments to be made against Bell. When you look at Chastain starting second, compared with the $9,100 price tag, that's like 46, 47 points, give or take, that he needs. And if he can score like 50 or like 52, he's going to really change the dynamic of the optimal lineup. Like his price range is where I'd want to take shots on. And so outside of Bell and Larson, I think Chastain would be the answer to that. And yet again, since I'm not playing Bell, I would kind of just use any ownership that I would personally have on him, and I would just put it towards Chastain because, like, why not? I might as well do that.
Just one guy that I just happen to be getting some of in my sims and in my lineups that I to that point. I guess the answer to the question is, well, Sheets, if I didn't mention him, then I don't like him. But any hope that we can get lucky and like Noah Gragson can do something, or not really?
You know, I
You could say no. Just
I mean, I don't even think it's a no. But
okay.
I mean, I can't, like, one thing that people have told me. I don't mean to make this about me and stuff, but I only do 20 lines. Like, for whatever reason, that is just my sweet spot.
Yeah.
The fact I'm able to do stuff with 20, like some people will say, that's very impressive. I just can't afford to use lineups on things like Gregson. Gregson is very much a candidate to win this year, and I just don't know when it's going to happen, especially when you look at what he was driving last year and you look at where Legacy is this year with how slow they are. I mean, people wanted like Gregson's head. They wanted him removed from the series, saying that he was just such a bad driver with no talent. And like, he's in a good car. Like, entering this year, we thought Stuart Haas, with Harvick leaving, would be like one of the worst teams in the series. And not only has Gregson been showing up and being a top 10 driver, but Barry is performing better than people expected. Priest is performing better than people expected. I can't for the life of me remember who the fourth driver is at the moment. But like, Gregson at 74, ninth best car at Dover last week, 14th best car at Las Vegas. Like, those are all numbers. As I say, you don't just go from running 15th to 18th to falling into a win, but you go from, this year being a top 10 car, you maintain a position in the race, you have a good pit stop. Like, Gregson can get the lead. Is it this race? I mean, I don't know. We're gonna have to see. But that, like, Gregson is very much a play that I think we're gonna see his price increase, and we're gonna see his if it stays this way, we're gonna see him start being like a true like 8th, 9th place car. And that's one thing that you do like for DFS. Now, I'm not saying I would play him over like Keselowski, but I think if you're like set on Keselowski and you still want to have some ownership to him, remove like one or two of those lines and just pay down 200 and play Gregson. Like, that's kind of where my opinion is.
Okay.
Even if I can't get to him in my own stuff, I think he is warranted to be in some lines. I think even my stuff was wanting to play him. Let me see. So he's not as high as I thought he would be in my stuff. I'm looking at just raw projected lineups, not necessarily like save results or anything. Because he's in like the 200s right now, but like lineups when I look at my like 5,000. But that's pretty high for somebody that I didn't think would end up being that high in results. And so that's 330. So also, this is another aspect of how I view my own stuff, which might help people, might not. So when I look at my highest projected lineups, I am seeing that those are projected for like 336 points, and projected points scored in lineups are very dependent on whatever projection source you're putting into. So that might be higher than other sites, it might be lower than other sites. I just look at them in relative to my own ownerships. And so when I look at my Gregson lineups, those are projected for like 318, 319, 320. And so when I look at like, okay, wow, like the Gregson lines are projected like, 18, 17 points lower than my top projected lineups. These are in like the 200s. Like Gregson is very much in play. Probably more so than I'm giving credit for. So I might end up with like just 1 or 2 Gregson lines and build specifically if he is optimal, what would that lineup look like? And that's how I'd like determine situations or drivers like that.
Yeah, Michael, if you could just rewind and uh, see what Brandon said about Keselowski. Just to summarize, probably a bit overowned relative to what Brandon likes.
Yeah, and I don't think I'm just like rambling. I think I'm giving like good stuff in my show. It's a long show, but I think I do a good job. I want to congratulate real fast Bixby or Stukas again. He took down the contest yesterday.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, the Xfinity.
Oh, that's awesome.
So he's
I
just going
didn't
to
know
bully
that.
us.
That's amazing.
Again.
That's excellent.
Yeah, he did. So he's very much like, it's one of those things where like you win 20,000 and you just automatically put 12,000 in your savings and you're just going to burn the 8K chasing stuff for like next month. So he's fully gonna like 150 max, NASCAR F1. We're gonna see Clive Bixby up there for fighting for a lot of these contests again. So congratulations to him. I forgot if Sterling and Knobs have taken it down, but that means Sheets, you've won a NASCAR contest already this year.
Yeah.
I've done it. Astukas has done it. I'm pretty sure Sterling has already done it. I could be wrong. But that's 3 of us, of the OG crew from my Patreon who's done it this year. So that's always awesome, especially earlier in the year. What else? And he did it solo too last night.
Well, so that doesn't count. See, that's the thing. Stukas promised me that if he won the $1 million on Daytona,
he'd come on and
he would
talk.
come on the show. But I guess the 20,000 in the
well, tell him that. Just
in the XFin. No, listen. Everybody's got their own thing. If he doesn't want to do it, I totally don't want to pressure someone to do that.
I like.
But let's just say this, and I hate to. I say this like, well, people say this way too often when someone wins it. Oh, this guy deserves it or something like that. He kind of deserves it. He works hard. He knows a lot. He's in there, and he plays hard. You know what I mean? Like he does deserve it. So
yeah, and I give him a lot of crap because him and I talk a lot. So I'm very, very friendly with him. That's why I keep giving him a hard time by not coming on and sharing his secrets because
it's okay. It's okay.
Let's see. I think I've covered about everything, despite the fact I had to repeat a lot of stuff entering this week. Are you going to do F1 tonight or play?
It's so funny. I was going to surprise you with a question about like who do you like in F1, but I didn't want to like freak you out at the end. So I was going to ask you if you liked anybody in F1 because I am going to try to run some lineups in that. Because I played literally 2 slates in that and I won the.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, why not?
So I haven't done any of my F1 stuff. The original plan was if enough people wanted to, I would just do it. I would do my entire stuff because we don't offer it on the site. Like I would just build my stuff live so people could see how I do it. I don't know if you want to stick around. That might be like a 20-minute.
Yeah, maybe because I'm like I literally just the I don't want to get too far into it, but when I run my projections and my sheets and stuff like that, I always like put a little in my head like a confidence level of how confident I am with the work I have. And usually like NBA, it's usually pretty confident, and just because of the more inputs and the more knowledge and the things I can tweak and things like that. And when you get all the way down to F1, it literally is the bottom of the barrel as far as the comp. That's why I almost don't want to put up what I have, because it's just, I don't want to say it's random, but it gives the impression that I have like extra knowledge when I really don't have that much. So that's why I don't put it up on there. But I do my own anyway, just to try to learn. I take projections, I run lineups, and I put the ownerships into the Sims, and I just kind of play around with it, whatever it is. But if you have any tidbits for who you like in there, I mean, I'd be more than happy to hear it.
Well, let me go ahead and start some stuff. I mean, I think at this point we have covered NASCAR. If everybody does have questions, I mean, I'll keep answering stuff. But I plan on doing F1 stuff as well. I will say that now, I mean, DFS is all just a math game. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it sounds stupid to be like, oh, F1 is just a math game. It just works out here or whatever. But I think F1 is the most just like math game.
It has to be, right?
DFS thing there. Like, lineups just work because the numbers fill out, mainly due to the fact that Max is going to score the exact same points.
Yeah, he's going to win every week.
He's gonna score the same thing every week. He's gonna win every race.
Like his standard deviation is like almost zero. Like,
yeah, and his pricing is dependent. Like if he works, it's not because, well, I mean, we're arguing like $200, $400 differences, but when Max works, it's because the value at the bottom of the salary has worked out math-wise to make him affordable. When he isn't in the optimal lineup, it's because the value at the bottom didn't allow him to overcome his price tag. And yet again, like, it's the math problem. It's not, oh man, you got good, you like played differently. No, it's just because like the guys at $3,000 like beat their teammates and you're able to pay up for Max Verstappen. So like F1 is, I like it from that point of view. I think it's horrific to talk about. Like people like, I don't think you could make good content for it because it's very much, well, it's a math problem. But that's what it is. So let me go ahead and just look real fast. We can kind of like first glance this together. Like I'm probably going to do like 7 lines or so for F1. It sucks that it's during NASCAR.
Probably 7 more than we're supposed to.
Okay. So Astukas, he might get mad at me for saying this. I'm not going to give anything away, regardless to what he does. But the one thing that a lot of like F1 is also like a terrible ROI, like probably the worst ROI DFS game that you could play. And I think you've also seen that by how duped the top lineup can be, how close the lineups are. Like you could play like the 6th best lineup and not even cash due to the trains that are ran. And so what we're seeing is a lot of the good players are no longer 150 max in F1. Good in terms of like know what they're doing, not just running a sim and then throwing their stuff in. We're seeing that they're very much limiting themselves, and this is kind of across the board for DFS because the rake is getting lower. It's more and more top heavy and stuff. But we're seeing that people are no longer 150 maxing as much, but they're doing like kind of like you do sheets, because I think you do 50 at most.
Yeah.
They're doing 50 or like 40.
But not even in that, I don't know if I would do 50. So the way
hold on. Let me get that back, and then I'll come because I think that's important. But so like a lot of guys are entering like 40 to 50, but they're only playing like 25 lineups. Like they're playing each lineup twice.
That's ridiculous.
Or no, look at the results. That's what Astukas is doing, and that's why he's been so successful.
Oh, you can't do that.
Some bitch has like the same lineup played 3 times.
You can't do that.
And he's getting
Astukas, you can't do that. I'm gonna have to, you know what? You're disinvited to the show. That's it. You can't do that.
That is. I'm sorry.
That can't be good. Maybe you know more than me. You can't.
That's how you beat F1. That's how you beat F1 now. You have to.
Oh, God.
You have to run trains of your lineups.
God help me.
So that's another aspect of F1. Like it's solved. That's how you get around the rake. That's how you get around the ties. You just enter.
You just get it right and play it 100 times.
That is the secret now.
Okay.
Sorry, the cat's out of the bag.
All right.
F1 has been solved. So it's even more expensive to chase now. It's even more expensive if you're wrong.
All right.
That's how you play F1 now.
Now I'm gonna have to play because that's what everybody else is doing.
I can't wait to see you run 10 lines 40 times.
No, it's gonna be the opposite. I'm gonna run 40 totally no chance unique lineups and take the 60-1 odds that I'm getting from everybody else.
That's also yet. I mean, at this point, we're this is F1 talk, and we haven't even talked about drivers. That's
It's not
also
even
another
F1
reason.
talk. It's like League of Legends talk.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
So that's another reason why, like when Verstappen blew up at Australia, and then Russell crashed and stuff. Like when the chalk completely busts, that's why there's a much higher likelihood of getting a solo winner now, because
Right.
you can't get a solo winner anymore if even
Something
because
normal, anything normal comes in.
yeah, because like I mean, you were basically playing. We have the captain and then 4 positions in the manufacturer and stuff. It's no longer getting a solo if you get. It's no longer like a 2v2. Like you drastically need 4v4s to be different, and due to that, you have to have like absolute chaos. So like that's the only way to get solo now is to build completely off of the expected results. And so yet again, like that's how you get ROI in F1. You just completely fade the chalk, and not even chalk, like you just completely build drastically different. But then if that works out, then you're not even anywhere near cashing. It's a complete mess. F1 is a complete mess.
Yeah.
It's a shit show. It just straight up is. Which is why it's a math game, everybody. That's
I guess I'm gonna have to play.
That's F1. But yeah, like pull the CSV today and notice the same lineups being ran by
all the good players.
By all the good players, man.
Good grief.
It's
God. I wonder how much money I'm going to lose, like trying to prove them wrong. Not that much, because I usually forget when F1's running. So it's I'm not going to lose that much.
But that is the secret now.
Okay.
So let me. Also, I haven't even mentioned chat. I'm sure people are bored at this point if they hated the Sims talk. This is just driving them crazy.
No, we'll take a break from that. I already listen. The guys that I'm getting that's just a little different. And again, it's so stupid when I say this because I wouldn't want people to think that because Sheets is getting this in his builds, I should throw these into mine. Like the reason I'm getting them in mine is because I'm doing different things overall. You know what I mean? Like I'm getting say 26% Noah Gregson, for example. Nobody should go in there and say, maybe I should play some of him. It just doesn't work that way. The only reason I'm getting 26% Noah Gregson is because of the other inputs I'm putting into the system. You know what I mean? So that's why I struggle with giving like the results of the Sims, and I just really just go through the process. Like for example, like when I do my MMA construction video, I go through the whole thing, and I literally don't even know who I have when I'm done with it. And I don't really care who I have because it's just literally the process. So I don't even show anybody who I have. It really is the process that makes the difference. So when I say, because of my Sims, I have 27% Gregson, that doesn't mean that he's a good play at all, or that I even like him, or that anybody should play him. It just depends on what else you put in there, and that's why it's probably better to do a completely separate video on applying the Sims to any slate than it is to incorporate it within any kind of player by player or driver by driver breakdown.
Yeah, and added on to that, I was already kind of doing that more and more, but truly outside of like anything I play outside of NASCAR, I don't even care what the exposure rate is anymore.
No, you really shouldn't.
I think that's the way. Yeah, I mean, you say like, during the MLB stuff, like that's the ultimate trust the process. Just whatever it gives you.
And I'm gonna say something else about that. And again, people think I'm being sarcastic. Think it's just not the case. Like I've had a decent handful of really really big scores in these lotteries. Okay, and I will say that with literally zero exceptions. Okay. The lineups that ended up taking it down are lineups I would never in a billion years have authorized. if I looked at it manually. You know, like if I like did that eye test that everybody's supposed to do on all your lineups, every single one of those like big enormous scores were lineups that I would have like rolled my eyes with and X'd out if I even thought to do that. And I'm not saying that means anything, but I'm just saying the reality. So when we do like these player by player breakdowns like during the day, there is a really big difference between who the good plays are and who you should actually play. So and I know it's not what people like to hear, but unfortunately, that's sort of the reality when it comes to listen. When it comes to playing the MMEs, like if you want to do single entry stuff, or even the stuff that you do, when you limit it to like 10, 20 entries, I still think you might want to be a little bit more funky. But if you're playing 20 entries in like these big GPPs, I mean, you're already like kind of in rough shape. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you might want to kind of, be a little more cavalier about what you play. I don't know.
Yeah, because even at 20, regardless of what contest, you either need to, I mean, it's not even, Brick talked about this in Lulz in the most recent episode, but it's no longer about, the top 1% lines anymore. It's truly you need to finish up top. But roughly, if it's 20, I typically need probably 12 to 13 lines to min cash to get everything back with like no profit or lose very little. And that's already very, very difficult. Okay, so I haven't looked at the practice feeds. I haven't watched anything related to F1 yet, but this is kind of just early builds looking at stuff before projections really come into play. Yet again, let me look at the bottom here.
That Verstappen guy is probably going to win, right? So.
Right, yeah.
And that's the type of content that you pay for. Like you got to pay for premium Sheets F1 content to get stuff that says that like Max Verstappen is probably going to win. So.
Okay, so the first thing that I look at is throwing in like Red Bull constructor, because it's most likely that Verstappen and Perez finish top 3. Just that's like the default that you have to go with. And so all this is assuming that Red Bull is the constructor. And we start looking at the viability of having Max in the lineup and Gasly starting 12th makes it very hard for that to happen, because that's like, he's 32nd. He's the second cheapest guy. Ocon is starting right beside him, who is the favorite to probably beat him heads up. Just yet again, where I'm at, like I said, I haven't seen any data point. I'm just speaking out loud here. So if Ocon beats him, it's very likely that Gasly is, going to score the 1 point for finishing. He's not going to finish in the top 10, so he's not going to get any points. And if he loses any positions, he's in the negative. So we could just talking out loud, Gasly is removed from the pool. So in order for Verstappen to be playable, Ricardo, Magnussen, Zhao, or Sargent would have to beat their teammates. And so like when we look at Ricardo versus Yuki, that's a tall order. You'd have to have Yuki run into a situation or run into some type of issue. Even if Ricardo gains some positions plus the 1 point for him finishing. Also, we have seen very much of F1 lineups have guys who just score the 1 point be viable. So like that, I'm not saying that it doesn't work out. But Ricardo at 38, him scoring like 1-2 points, I think that removes him from being in line that removes him from being viable if Verstappen makes the optimal lineup. Magnussen versus Nico. Nico performed very well in the sprint. I know that for sure. Like he's actually had speed, so I don't think Magnussen beats Nico straight up. And let's see, Zhao would have to beat Bottas. So if Verstappen is optimal today with Red Bull captain, then it's the Sargent and Zhou play. So like that would be the only way that I could foresee that happening. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because like the captain doesn't matter at that point, and we're just figuring out how builds would work. So I'm going to lean towards Also, Verstappen's 17,000. I didn't even notice that. I think he's actually unplayable.
What's the salary cap, like 16,000?
He's the highest it's ever been. I think 16.4, 16.6 was the highest. I didn't even notice he was 17. I think Verstappen is unplayable in the driver. So I guess I could have just looked at that before.
Listen, I have to go in a little bit, but before I leave, I want to address somebody's comment here. BG3 says thoughts on Suarez. Now, for those of you that don't know this, I mean, I'm a big just like to play Suarez guy. I mean, literally for no reason. Okay, but I happen to like playing him. And listen, correct me if my information is inaccurate, but today is Cinco de Mayo. All right, so
that is very true.
So you want to play a Cinco de Mayo Suarez narrative. I mean, and pretend that is worth something. Then that's something you can do.
A newly minted dual citizen of America and Mexico.
There it is.
Now,
some might say that he might be driving drunk instead, so that maybe you won't want to play him because of Cinco de Mayo. But the Cinco de Mayo, listen, if it comes in, that people are going to say that it was a lock.
Oh yeah, of course.
One of those amazing things that happens after the results come in DFS. That's definitely one that's going to be talked about after the fact, that it was definitely a lock and why didn't everybody play?
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Yeah, didn't even think about that aspect. Didn't even notice it.
Yeah, there it is. See, that's the premium sheets part of the
show
content. So.
Let me see. Because I know I have Suarez in lines.
See, this is where it starts.
Yeah.
I'm going to end up with like 94% Suarez, and there it is.
So I'm 10 in my 20, and I have 3 with Suarez. I can't imagine I get it over 20.
That's fair enough.
Okay. That's where, or 20%. I doubt I get over 20%, but I do have Suarez today. Back to F1 really fast before we leave, as we kind of talk through stuff. So Verstappen's removed, which makes it easy because then I just don't play any Verstappen. I don't got to worry about that. And even if chaos happens, 17,000 is very unlikely to fit in the driver. So like Verstappen's unplayable. Looking at, like I said, yet again, I don't have projections made. I'm just looking at builds really fast. Seems like Russell captains. Seems like Russell captain. Alonso captain would be the. See if I can fit it with. I don't think I can fit Leclerc.
So here's a dumb question. So if the good players are just taking their best lineup in F1 and playing like 20 times or whatever, correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't you supposed to just play like the third best lineup? I mean,
that's not.
What do I know? But that
is. Yeah, you're not wrong.
Or are they playing 100 lineups and they're playing like 5 lineups, 20 each, something like that?
We've seen that too. Okay. I mean, it's we're so deep
into the weeds with this. Everybody's leveling themselves, I think. I
don't know. It is totally like that, and we're seeing it. I mean, it's not MLB. There's enough players in there and stuff, but like I've seen it in the showdowns for NBA this season as well, which is why I took a step back. I was like, oh fuck, they're doing the same thing there as F1. I don't have the bankroll to keep fighting
to keep up with that, right?
I don't like. I can't do that. But yeah, it is. Let's see. I don't think I have any. We could look at that. When was the last F1 race? 2 weeks ago? I don't think I have any. Because we can look at the contest really fast. Let's see. Here, I'll just pull the last contest. Here. I'm gonna put this here real fast. This is also a situation of like, oh wait, wait a minute. Hold on, I gotta turn my screen off real fast. I gotta
Yeah.
pull this file, or I gotta extract it. This is a situation of like where we're at in DFS. Like if you're not, I don't know. Like I think if you're not looking at it even in like this situation either, you're kind of losing, or at least being aware of it. Why is this not wanting to open?
The fact that we have 99 people watching us go through the past F1 lineups to see if it's profitable to do a 40 lineup train means that people really want to hear what you have to say. So let's.
Why is this not wanting to open? I also just make my life hard because I don't use Excel for anything. Like so, yeah. Man, I can't. If I give you the link to the contest, can you pull the CSV really fast?
Sure.
Because I'm having issue like when I export lines to CSV. Typically, I at least get like a file I could extract to. It's just giving me like a blank CSV, so it might be the content.
Should be able to. Where put it somewhere. Let's see.
I'll send it to you on Discord.
Okay, let's see. 1 second.
Or let me know if it's just this contest. Maybe I can try.
No, I know. I'm just gonna. I gotta do something else. Okay. Let me get into Discord. Hold on. Let's see. You're in.
I just messaged it to you.
Oh, okay. Let's see. I'll be able to pull this up. Oh, there you are.
So this was this is the last F1 contest. We'll see.
No, it's not even bringing me to the contest.
Let me try. That's so weird.
Let's see if I did this. Wait, games. No, it's not doing it. And I got to run. All right. Good luck, everybody, and I will see you guys later.
Yeah. See you later, Sheets. Thank you for the talk. I had fun. That's so weird. Is it? I mean, like now I'm like, why is this not showing up? Because like, let me see if I can check the $4 one. Could just be that contest. Dude, I literally can't pull any CSV from any contest right now. That's insane. Or at least for these contests like a week ago. So we cannot check that live on here. Unfortunate. Past that, do we have any more questions related to NASCAR or F1? If you guys enjoyed this, do consider subscribing if you aren't already. Do consider liking the video and consider, joining us if you want to talk with Sheets and I or anybody through the Discord like during the week. Let me go ahead and check chat to see if you guys have anything else here. I don't know why I couldn't. This is a blank CSV file. What the heck is going on, man? Let me try it again. It's giving me. Dude, I don't know why I'm so annoyed at this. Why is this? Let me change it. Does anybody have the CSV file for the last F1 contest at this point? Now I'm like actually annoyed that I can't get this. What if I go? So this is the 421. Can I look at the 407? What if we which one's on the 7? What is it called? It is Grand Prix. Let's see if we can find the Grand Prix contest here. Why is it not letting me? Okay, let me try and pull the one from 407. What the heck? It's not letting me do that either. What about the Truck Series contest? Can I pull the Truck Series contest from yesterday? Yeah. Okay. So like if I pull, okay, it may be because I've never pulled anything like up since it happened like a month ago. Like if I pull the Truck Series CSV from like last night, I get a file and I get the CSV. If I pull it from the month ago, it's not giving me one. So that's weird. I've never seen that before. All right, what else you guys got here? Favorite F1 captain? I have no clue. Okay, yeah. So let's get back to doing this live, I guess. So also here, you guys are gonna get a kick out of how I do this. So like yet again, what I'm gonna do post this video. How much time we got before lock? I gotta figure this stuff out too. We got 3 hours and 50 minutes till lock for the Cup Series, and we have 4 hours and 30 minutes until the lock for the F1. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do now, and then what I would do when I finish this, because I still got to build lineups for NASCAR. So when I finish this, I'm going to watch. I'm going to assume they had FP1, sprint queue. I got to determine if qualifying for the main was before the sprint queue or after sprint queue. And I'm going to watch the F1 sprint and then use all that stuff entering this race. But just really fast, we can kind of just eyeball it here, and this won't be specific, but we can kind of just look at what we're looking at. So yet again, we're not using Max, but it doesn't matter because we can just give him being his teammate and getting the fast lap. So like we can assume that Leclerc is going to finish third or second. So we'll just put him for second. We'll put Perez for third. We'll put Sainz for fourth because I think Ferrari is going to have the speed to possibly fight with Red Bull. And yet again, so this is just how I do stuff because over here I have a visualization or I have the points here, and I basically just run off of what I have here. And so like I always project Max for 30. I know he scores more, but I just run him with 30. And what we're mainly looking at is where everybody else is back here in terms of who's going to be chalk, who won't be chalk. I think we can kind of determine here just by looking at where the qualifying went. We can determine on where people will go, like the two McLarens being next to each other and the two Mercedes being actually Alpine, Mercedes, and McLaren starting beside each other. These are both very much 50-50 chances, like heads up, straight up. Maybe not. Yeah, I guess they knock on. Very much 50-50 of who beats each other here. Lewis Hamilton, Russell, and it's probably more Norris. But Norris ran into issues yesterday in the sprint. I don't know what that was about. If that was the car, if it was a mechanical issue. I don't really care. You don't have to correct it in the chat because that'll be found out after this. But these individuals are going to determine what you can realistically do in terms of what the album will be. This is very much as we talked about with Gasly. He's at the bottom. He's much more valuable than other people because, like with Russell and Hamilton, you're very much playing one or the other with whatever the lineup is, etc. Lando, Norris, Oscar, like very much 1v1, depending on whatever's going on. And if you're building with Lando, then you're giving up either playing like Russell or possibly one of the Ferraris and stuff like that. So like those builds don't necessarily matter. Like these projections for these four people actually do not matter. Yet again, it's a math problem. Everything is so dependent on what really happens. The projections for these don't really matter, especially like if you look at SaberSim. Here, we'll discuss SaberSim really fast. Let me bring it up and let me make sure I have it on F1 so I don't just pour my lineups from NASCAR on the screen on accident. Let's see if they even have F1 stuff up yet. Okay, yeah. So like this is where projections are kind of useless here, truly. So like I'm assuming we're going to have, let me just look on the outside, look it in. I think SaberSim's going to give it to Lando. It's going to give it to probably Russell, and it's going to give it to Alonso. So let's see. very much 50-50. I mean, it leans Russell, but very similar. Lando and Oscar leans to Lando, but very similar, so very much 50-50. And then we're looking at Stroll and Alonso very favorably leaning towards Alonso. So at that point, that doesn't matter. So actually, this will be a great example of what we're looking at here. Hold on. Grid. I don't have this. Actually, fuck that. Let's change Max because we're not fucking with Max at all. It doesn't matter what he does, and we'll just change Alpine down here. And we'll just goof around and see what this is giving us here. And while that loads, we'll look back here. And so we'll just kind of free ball it here for the video. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, okay, I don't like that because I don't want to give Albon 11. Also, this is how I do it manually. I mean, clearly after post everything, I just give everybody like one thing. So I'm like, well, I missed Albon, so Albon would probably be 11th. It's gonna hurt Nico. Let's give him 12. So now I got to redo everything. So 12, update everybody here. 14, 15. I don't think I got to 16 yet. So here we are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, maybe 17. Oh, man. Doesn't matter where Ricardo is. Doesn't fucking matter. 19, actually 19, and then 20. Okay, so we've done that. And then we just go through and give the bonus points to everybody who beat their teammate, which will probably be chalky at this point. Because I would expect Alonso to beat Stroll. That's the wrong guy. No, Albon still beats him. I'm missing Saber. Okay, so I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so I did all those. All right, so that's where everybody is. So yet again, I don't calculate for the bonus point given for finishing. So technically these would be like, wait, yeah. -1, 6, 11, 6, 6, 1, -1, 7, 6, 5, 14, 7, 16, 19, 13, 21. So these would be the projections that I would run with. So Stroll is probably the first guy. I mean, you're only playing Stroll if you expect Alonso to lose. Okay. And typically what I do, as we just talked about, how you F1 just a math problem. I just mix and match. I don't even give a fuck who I'm playing at the bottom. I look at like the 1v1s and I'm like, well, hopefully, Botas just crashes and then Zhao works. Like that's literally all I do. But in terms of captains for today, let's see what they're giving here. I would assume before we even look at what SaberSim, this is kind of what I'm guessing from build wise. It's Russell. Let me look at salaries. Russell, Alonso, Hamilton, depending on who you have. So Mercedes doesn't matter. So Fernando, whatever Mercedes. Sainz if you have him beating the teammate. But Norris is over. He doesn't work. Leclerc is overpriced for captain. So it's Russell, Hamilton, Alonso, mid-tier. And then if we're punting, then it's always, always throw Sargent in there, Zhao, Ricardo, Bottas. So on the outside looking in, I think Ricardo makes a really awesome play in the captain. You need Yuki to crash. So just know that if Yuki doesn't crash, that lineup doesn't cash. That's like the caveat on every lineup. I like Ricardo. If Yuki doesn't crash, I lose. Okay, Sargent. If Albon doesn't crash, we lose. Zhao would probably be my favorite captain today. And that's how you play F1. So let's see what SaberSim is saying here, just based off of this. So we got. Wait a minute. I did 20 lines, built 2,000. Let's look at the top 300. Where is? I don't like that they've moved this exposure crap way over here. I just want to see the exposure rates. So we have Ricardo, Leclerc paying up, Stroll, Sainz. Okay, that doesn't help me at all. Let's see. Ricardo, hey, would you look at that? Now, the reason I said it by projected score is that's what I'm always trying to do. Let's find projected score, okay? Let's see what is let's see what the expected, what's expected if scoring goes the way it should, and nothing really rocks the boat or whatever. And Ricardo, as I just said, I would be like, yeah, Ricardo's probably the guy that makes the most sense. You need Yuki to crash, and Ricardo's there. Then you have Leclerc. It's interesting that it takes Magnussen, but I mean, you have to pay down for F1 practically. So the more and more things get expensive, if we look at expensive guys, it's Alonso. It's interesting that they didn't throw Russell in there, so I guess maybe Russell can't work with what they're projecting him with. Interesting. So it's looking like we're just punting at Captain Day. Literally doesn't even matter. Pick your poison and just hope to God like you have the right line. And it's saying Ricardo's just it's Ricardo. There's no fucking. I don't trust that ownership at all. But Ricardo's probably going to be very popular. Where's Zhao at? Yeah. And then also, if you look at things in terms of what the expected optimal lineup is, or like optimal rate, Ricardo, Zhao, or Zhou, I always forget how to pronounce his name. We're going to see them be ranked very high in percentage of working because they not only work at the 1-2 points, but then when they beat their teammate, they automatically work. Stuff like that. This is saying max, but I think that is. Well, I moved max down, but I personally wouldn't play max. So let's take max out of the equation here, and also let's not have any stupid. Yeah, so it's locking in Red Bull. Still Ricardo. Yeah, so that's mainly it. With or without Perez will be your main thing. If you're using Perez, then your lineups are going to look like this. If you don't use Perez, then you're using the mid-tier guys, and that's F1. There's literally nothing else I can do to help. That's literally it. That's how you go about F1. And what are these? And not even the Sims. Not even the Sims. So when we were tracking, I guess if you run the Sims on SaberSim for F1. The top lines there will be similar to the top lines on Run the Sim. They won't necessarily be 1-to-1, but they will have similar lineups. Okay. And I'm assuming that I can't think of anybody else who does F1 stuff, but those will be similar. So you can see what lineups are fitting in between those. And then, like I said, you can either enter those or enter them a lot, or you identify exactly what lineups are going to be played, and you look at the top most likely lineups to work, and then you just don't play any of those and hope for chaos. That's literally F1. It is just a math game, and I would advise you, if you do not have the bankroll to chase either one of those outcomes, do not play F1. It is so It is probably the most brutal DFS game there is, and because of all those reasons. Let's see what else we got. 8090, you guys still here as I talk about this for no odd reason. I think now I'm just kind of just here chilling. So let's what's the last thing I want to talk about? Oh, let's talk about my day really fast. So I get up at like 4 o'clock, right? Because I was tired. I got up to go to the golf tournament yesterday at like 5 or whatever. I go to sleep early. I wake up, and I order coffee and stuff because like I want my breakfast and stuff. And then I find out that the NASCAR preview video has been taken down, and like trolling 101 because I'm a troll as well. Like I've been through all this type of stuff. Um, I go through and I see that, oh, I got a notification for cyberbullying and promoting harassment in the NASCAR preview video. And he might be like, well, Cruz, that's you. Like, what else do you expect, my guy? And I fully understand. Oh, I didn't even show. I wasn't showing the Sabres some stuff. Oh, whatever. Even better. I didn't show anything on screen. So I get that notification, and I'm like, that's fishy. That's sus. Like, I'm certainly not doing any of that stuff on my work. At my own the business that I work with and have a percentage of. I'm not going to be harassing people and promoting bullying on that. And for those of you that don't know, if you report a video on YouTube, specifically when it's just uploaded, if there's not a lot of views, regardless of the likes or not, regardless of what video it has, and especially if it's a small channel, if you report it for cyberbullying, it gets removed right off the bat. Like the YouTube system will automatically take it down, like just out of safety, out of a precaution. And so if you do it manually, you have to put a timestamp in of where it's showing that, because YouTube, their own bot or thing, like it'll, the thing that creates captions and stuff, it won't um, suspend it for that on its own. That has to be manually submitted to YouTube. So somebody manually submitted my video for bullying and cyber harassment and stuff like that, which is so funny because like the timestamp it was selected was like 1450, and it's just me going through like how Reddick performed at Dover. So anyway, I as I'm dealing with that, I'm getting my like Uber Eats order at like 4:30 in the morning or like 5 o'clock in the morning. And so as I'm going through that, I'm like, why is this video like blocked? I'm like re-uploading to my channel because I'm like, oh shit, it's like an hour of my life wasted. Nobody's watched it. Very annoyed. So I upload to my channel, and my phone goes off of like, oh, your breakfast is here. And I'm like, okay. So I walk down to my front door, and nothing's there. Like it's not in my thing. And I look at the picture that it's at, and not saying that I was going to say due to my job, I have learned to. That's why I explain things so thoroughly, is because there's a lot of stupid people out there, man. And so I like baby step everything of where my apartment is, where it's at. I give them the gate code and everything. Like I never have issues with getting food delivered or anything delivered because I'm like so idiot proofed the system that it is drastically so hard to get it wrong. I'm also on the third floor, and it's not like they have to go in. Like I just have a stair going out, like to the parking lot from my place. And I look at the picture and I'm like, oh my god, man, it's not on my place. He put it on the door of the person who lives on the first floor of the building that I'm in. Uh, because I'm assuming the numbers look like he just got lazy and put it there because it's not the correct number. We have the apartment numbers right by the door. It's wrong, right? And so I'm like, oh man, I hope he didn't wake him up. I also have in the description like, hey, please don't ring or knock on the doorbell, or don't knock on the door, don't ring the doorbell. Because I just prefer that. Like, just drop it off. I'll get it. Like, you're fine. Sometimes I'm like watching my friend's dog, and I don't want the dog freaking out or whatever. And so as I'm going down there at 5 in the morning to get the food, to get my breakfast, the door opens and she answers. And I'm like, I am so sorry that idiot woke you up. And I'm assuming he rang the doorbell as well at 5 o'clock in the morning because you're awake. I am so sorry. Can you imagine just trying to enjoy your weekend and then being woken up by the doorbell at fucking 5 a.m.? I couldn't. I felt so bad for my neighbor. I would like. She looked so tired. I'm like, I'm so sorry. She's probably out there partying on a Saturday, enjoying her weekend, and here I am just trying to get my food delivered. Get my So like that's how my day started. I had to deal with like waking up my poor neighbor at 5 a.m. on a Sunday. I had to deal with my video being taken down. I had to deal with getting projections up because I was too tired to do them last night. That's why I went to sleep at like 8 o'clock. I want to get all that stuff done. So like that's how my day's been so far. That's been the morning and everything so far. Um and that explains why I got so many messages of if I'm going to do truck series stuff because the video was taken down. I mentioned in the video that hey, I'm going to be going to a golf tournament Saturday morning. I'll be back for trucks. Like it all makes sense. It all makes sense. Um, so yeah. So anyway, I mean, we've been here for you know hour and 40 minutes, having fun and everything. Best of luck today, guys. If you guys enjoyed this, do consider supporting the channel in whatever form you feel right to do so. And past that, best of luck in Cup Series and F1 and whatever else you're playing. And I will see you guys later. So hasta la pasta. See you later, guys. Bye bye.